What just happened at the G7 summit has everyone talking, and it's not about the usual world leaders. Canada just pulled off a diplomatic curveball that left Donald Trump visibly stunned, and the man at the center of it all, none other than Mark Carney.
And top leaders of the world have descended on a luxury mountain lodge nestled in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies for the G7 summit.
From icy glares to a bold response that shocked the entire room, this wasn't your typical summit handshake photo op. This was global politics with teeth. Buckle up, because in the next few minutes, we're diving into the jaw-dropping moment Canada humiliated Trump, and the world took notice.
Well, just last hour, Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump said they are aiming to reach a trade and security deal within 30 days. This news comes after the leaders opened the day with a positive.
The G7 firestorm, Trudeau's bold move versus Trump's thin skin. Canada didn't come to the G7 summit in Italy to play nice, and neither did Justin Trudeau. The Canadian Prime Minister came prepared, armed with facts, climate reports, and a firm resolve to hold the line on global cooperation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump showed up like a grumpy wedding crasher, late, loud, and looking for a fight. When Trudeau called for a firm international response to climate change and rising authoritarianism, Trump visibly rolled his eyes. But it wasn't just the optics. Trump reportedly stormed out of one of the closed-door sessions after Trudeau shut down his pitch to roll back environmental regulations for economic growth. Sources said Trudeau's exact words were, "That's not leadership, that's surrender." The room went silent. And Trump? He fumbled through an awkward retort, mumbled something about fake numbers, and walked out. For years, Trump's strategy has been intimidation and bluster. But this time, Canada wasn't backing down. Trudeau made it clear that the world doesn't need another G7 summit turned into a photo op circus. Instead, he demanded real action and reminded the room that Trump's previous trade war threats had cost both sides, but especially the US, billions. In that moment, it became obvious. Trudeau was steering the conversation, and Trump was grasping for relevance. It wasn't just a political clash. It was a public dismantling of Trump's go-it-alone bravado, and Canada delivered the knockout.
Of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations. And we're gathering.
Mark Carney steps in, and Trump wasn't ready. If Trudeau rattled Trump, Mark Carney finished him off. The former governor of the Bank of Canada, and more recently the UN's climate finance czar, was invited to offer insights during a G7 financial roundtable. What was meant to be a technical session on sustainable development quickly turned into a policy bloodbath. Carney, calm and clinical, exposed the economic fallacy of Trump's America First ideology. He pointed to real data. US pullbacks on climate funding had triggered capital flight, while Canada's green bond investments surged. Trump tried to scoff, blurting out, "We don't do globalism, that's your problem." But Carney didn't flinch. He countered, "Isolationism is not strength. It's a tax on your own people." Even European leaders nodded. A leaked briefing noted that Trump's team was visibly rattled after Carney cited IMF data showing Canada's post-pandemic economy outperforming the US in key sectors, from clean energy to tech startups. Trump, red-faced, snapped back with a trademark jab, calling Carney a globalist banker and accusing him of being anti-American. But here's the twist. Carney is Canadian-British and once served as governor of the Bank of England. So the insult fell flat, as awkward as calling maple syrup woke. The room wasn't buying it. It became clear that Trump wasn't just outmatched intellectually, he was out of touch. In Carney, Canada didn't just have an economist, they had a statesman. And in that moment, Trump realized he wasn't running the room. He was running out of allies.
Short, but didn't have a chance to see you on the day. Happy birthday to the U.S. military as well, 250th, and this is the 50th birthday, if you will, of the G7.
Global media reacts. Canada embarrasses Trump on world stage. Within hours, headlines were exploding. Canada clashes with Trump over climate at G7. CNN. Mark Carney dismantles Trump's economic claims. The Guardian. Humiliated and alone, Trump leaves G7 early after spat. Der Spiegel. It wasn't just the press piling on. Social media lit up with clips of Trudeau firmly rebuking Trump's comments on NATO spending. TikTok dubbed it Trudeau versus Trump, The rematch nobody saw coming. What struck global audiences wasn't just Canada's leadership, it was Trump's glaring lack of it. In years past, the US president dominated these summits. But this time, Trump looked like an outsider. Every handshake felt forced, every smile performative, and when he left a climate discussion midway, reportedly because he felt ganged up on, it confirmed what many already suspected: Trump was out of his depth. Political analysts on MSNBC described it best. Canada didn't just hold its ground, it led the charge. The message was unmistakable. The era of Trump bullying allies into silence was over. The G7, traditionally seen as a venue for US dominance, had flipped, and Canada, polite, persistent, and prepared, rose as the unexpected counterweight. The international community noticed. Trump's isolationist playbook looked not only outdated, it looked dangerous. And when Trudeau and Carney stood side by side during a press briefing, the contrast couldn't be starker. Canada offered facts, vision, and diplomacy. Trump offered tantrums and Twitter threats. Guess who the world took seriously? Fallout and the bigger picture. Trump's G7 exit backfires. Trump's early departure from the G7 wasn't just a diplomatic blunder, it was a strategic disaster. Back in the US, his supporters tried to spin it as strong leadership and refusing to be lectured. But let's be honest, walking out of the most important economic summit of the year isn't strength, it's cowardice. And Canadians weren't having it. Trudeau's approval ratings ticked up within 48 hours. Even conservative Canadian media praised his measured strength. Meanwhile, Trump's G7 tantrum added fuel to criticisms back home. Economists warned that his continued resistance to green energy would cost America thousands of jobs in emerging sectors. Worse, his open disdain for allies pushed even longtime US partners closer to Canada and the EU. The US Chamber of Commerce issued a rare rebuke, saying, "America's global credibility depends on responsible engagement, not storming out when challenged." But here's the kicker: Trump's behavior actually elevated Canada's standing. The G7 usually ends with a carefully worded communiqué. This year, Canada led the drafting effort and excluded Trump's edits. His objections were noted, then ignored. That's not just diplomatic slapstick, that's political exile. One insider quipped, "It's like he brought a knife to a climate fight and got schooled by a banker." The message was loud and clear. Canada isn't the quiet kid at the back of the class anymore. It's the one setting the tone. And Trump? He walked out with nothing but headlines he can't spin and allies he can't intimidate. So, was this a turning point in how world leaders confront Trump? Mark Carney's masterclass in cool defiance just sent a message that rippled across the globe. And Canada isn't backing down. As the summit closed, analysts were still scrambling to make sense of what they witnessed. But one thing's clear, Canada didn't just make a statement, they made history. If you found this takedown as wild as we did, drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. This G7 just rewrote the rules of power plays.